The city of San Francisco pulsed with energy as night settled over Nob Hill. Beyond the grand neoclassical columns of the Fairmont San Francisco, the skyline glittered like a jeweler's showcase, the distant hum of traffic blending with the murmur of conversations from the elite who had gathered for one of the most anticipated nights in fashion. Inside the flagship showroom of Davenport Atelier, the atmosphere was charged with a different kind of tension. Liam Davenport stood near the floor-to-ceiling glass windows, his silhouette a stark contrast against the city's electric glow. His hands were buried in the pockets of his impeccably tailored charcoal suit, but beneath his composed exterior, his mind was anything but calm. He should have been focused on the collection set to debut in less than an hour, the culmination of months of relentless work. But instead, his gaze was locked on an aged document spread across his desk, its edges slightly frayed, its contents as ruthless as the world he inhabited. Liam James Davenport must marry before his 35th birthday to retain ownership of 51% of Davenport Atelier. The words burned into his consciousness, as they had for the past 7 years. The condition had been set in motion by his late father, a man as brilliant as he was ruthless in his business dealings. The terms were clear: fail to comply, and his controlling shares would be redistributed among existing stakeholders, leaving the door wide open for Cassandra Belmont, the woman who had once betrayed his trust, to maneuver her way back into power. Liam exhaled sharply, the muscles in his jaw tightening. He had fought too hard to rebuild the company after his father's death, had spent sleepless nights ensuring its survival in an industry where failure was a death sentence. He refused to let Cassandra undo everything he had sacrificed. The soft chime of an incoming message on his phone broke his thoughts. He glanced at the screen. "Marcus Bennett, I found someone who can help you. She'll be there in 10 minutes. Liam frowned, tossing the phone onto the desk with a muted thud. Help? He didn't need anyone's help, least of all a stranger's. If Marcus had come up with some half-baked solution, he was going to hear about it. Still, Marcus wasn't the type to waste his time, and Liam trusted him more than anyone in this cutthroat world. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Liam straightened. "Come in." The door swung open, and Marcus strode in with the easy confidence of a man who had nothing to lose. But Liam's attention wasn't on him. It was on the woman trailing behind him. She wasn't what he expected. She stepped forward with a deliberate stride, her gaze meeting his without hesitation. She wasn't adorned in the sleek, high-fashion ensembles typical of those who sought entry into his world. Instead, she wore a worn denim jacket over a fitted black turtleneck, her brown hair loosely pulled into a ponytail. In her arms, she carried a thick sketchbook, its corners softened from use. No makeup, no designer labels, no pretense. Just unshakable confidence in her stance. There was something unsettling about that confidence. Marcus gestured toward her, his expression unreadable. "Liam, meet Emily Thornton." Liam said nothing, merely observing as she placed the sketchbook on his desk, her movements deliberate. "I know what you're up against," she said, her voice steady, "and I know how to turn it into an advantage." Liam studied her, the weight of her words lingering between them. A freelance designer? That's who Marcus thought could help him? His eyes traced the smudges of graphite on her fingers, the slight wear on the edges of her jacket. She looked more like a street artist than someone who could navigate the high-stakes world of fashion business warfare. Yet, there was no doubt in her expression, no hesitation in her posture. For the first time in the past few weeks, Liam felt something unexpected, a sliver of curiosity. "And what exactly makes you think you can help me?" Emily didn't flinch, her gaze locked onto his, unwavering. The air inside the Davenport Atelier showroom was thick with the scent of fresh leather and the crisp bite of expensive cologne, a fragrance that lingered in the air like a silent declaration of power. Outside, the San Francisco skyline stretched endlessly, its shimmering lights a testament to the ambition that pulsed through the veins of the man standing at the center of it all. Liam Davenport leaned against his mahogany desk, its polished surface reflecting the ambient glow of the city beyond. The golden hues from the streetlights cast long shadows across the room, accentuating the hard lines of his jaw and the unwavering sharpness in his gaze. He was a man accustomed to control, to precision, and to the unrelenting pursuit of success. Tonight, however, an unexpected variable had entered his domain. Emily Thornton stood before him, poised, unmoved by his scrutiny. There was a quiet confidence in the way she held herself, an air of defiance beneath her composed exterior. She had faced powerful men before, had walked the fine line between intrigue and illusion. But Liam Davenport was different. He didn't just observe. He dissected, analyzed, waiting for the moment she might falter. A flicker of amusement played at the corner of her lips as she let the silence stretch between them. Then, with calculated precision, she began. "I know you need someone to play the role of your wife to keep your shares," she said, her voice smooth yet unwavering. "And I know how to make it look real, not just to the media, but to your shareholders. I'm good at creating stories, and I can help you tell yours." The words settled between them, unshaken by the weight of the unspoken challenges that followed. Her gaze remained steady, daring him to dismiss her. Liam's eyes flicked toward Marcus Bennett, his trusted confidant, who stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the exchange with quiet curiosity. The city lights reflected off the glass, mirroring the tension in the room. Liam's voice, when it came, was edged with skepticism. "Where did you find her?" Marcus only shrugged, offering a smirk. "Maybe you should hear her out." Liam exhaled sharply, the sound carrying more weight than he intended. He had spent years navigating the ruthless world of fashion, outmaneuvering competitors and silencing critics. Trust was a currency he spent sparingly, and Emily Thornton was an investment he wasn't sure he wanted to make. His voice dropped, cold and precise. "Let's say I agree. This is purely a transaction. You do your job, I pay you, and no one crosses the line into my personal life." Emily's gaze didn't waver. "Understood, Mr. Davenport." For a long moment, Liam studied her, searching for cracks in her confidence. Most people flinched under his scrutiny, but not her. There was something unsettling about that. Something he wasn't sure if he admired or distrusted. "And what's in it for you?" he asked, his tone probing, testing the cracks in her facade. For the briefest moment, a shadow passed through her eyes, a flicker of something unsaid. "I have my reasons," she replied, her voice even, controlled. It wasn't an answer, not really, and yet it was enough to stir an unease within him. He didn't have the luxury of dissecting it. He needed a solution, and if she could deliver, he would take it, at least for now. "Fine," he said, his voice measured. "Where do you start?" Emily's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. With a swift motion, she pulled out her phone, her fingers moving across the screen with the efficiency of someone who had done this before. Within seconds, she had created an Instagram account under the name Liam and Emily, and uploaded a carefully edited photo, an image from last year's Barcelona Fashion Week, now subtly altered to include the faint silhouette of a woman standing beside him. The caption was simple, yet effective. "Love is the greatest inspiration." B&A. She turned the screen toward him. "The first step is media coverage. We need them to believe this before the shareholders start asking questions." Liam's gaze narrowed as he studied the screen. Within moments, the post had garnered dozens of likes, the hashtag number Davenport Power Couple already beginning to trend. He clenched his jaw, his mind calculating. The world of high fashion and business was brutal, where perception shaped reality. A single misstep could turn investors wary, making deals vanish overnight. He knew how the game was played, but Emily seemed to know it just as well. "You're fast," he admitted, more to himself than to her. He was rarely caught off guard, but she had managed to surprise him. He quickly masked his reaction, his voice regaining its usual edge. "But this isn't enough. Fashion media isn't easy to fool. Neither are my shareholders." Emily only nodded, her confidence unwavering. "That's why I've prepared a story. We met at a small exhibition in Portland. I was an emerging designer, and you were drawn to my ideas. Simple, believable, and easy to verify." She flipped open her sketchbook, her pencil gliding across the page in precise, fluid movements. The showroom lights highlighted the fine angles of her face, the focus in her eyes unshakable. She was an artist, but more than that, she was a strategist, a storyteller who knew exactly how to sell a lie. Liam watched her in silence, his sharp instincts assessing every detail. She wasn't just clever, she was meticulous. There was a rare brilliance in the way she operated, an understanding of perception that few possessed. And yet, something about her didn't add up. His voice cut through the quiet. "Where did you work before this?" Emily hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Too quick for most to notice, but Liam caught it. "I'm freelance," she answered smoothly. "Worked with a few small brands, nothing major." Liam smirked, unconvinced. "Freelance? Yet you know how to handle media like this? You don't seem like a rookie." He stepped closer, his gaze scrutinizing her, dissecting her every move, every breath. There was something she wasn't telling him, something buried beneath that carefully composed exterior. And Liam Davenport wasn't the kind of man to let mysteries go unexplored. Emily only smiled, lowering her gaze back to her sketchbook, as if the conversation was already over. She wasn't going to give him answers. Not yet. Liam exhaled, stepping onto the showroom balcony. The cool San Francisco air hit him, carrying with it the distant hum of the city. Below, the neon lights of Nob Hill shimmered like fallen stars, the elite of the fashion world moving through the night with effortless grace. Inside him, however, something unfamiliar stirred. Emily Thornton was nothing like Cassandra Belmont. His past, his mistake. She wasn't seductive, wasn't flashy. But there was something about her that gnawed at him, an unpredictability that refused to be ignored. Liam had spent his life building walls around himself, constructing a world where emotions were liabilities and trust was a rare commodity. But now, as he turned back to the woman who had so confidently stepped into his storm, he couldn't shake the unsettling thought that he might have just met the one person capable of dismantling it all. The night had settled over San Francisco like a velvet cloak, the distant hum of the city stretching beneath the towering skyline. From the balcony of the Davenport Atelier showroom, Liam Davenport stood in silence, his gaze locked on the glittering expanse below. The city never slept, but neither did he. His mind was always working, calculating, dissecting every possible move before it happened. Behind him, the faint click of a door opening signaled Marcus Bennett's arrival. Without turning, Liam felt the weight of his presence, the easy confidence in his step. A firm hand clapped against his shoulder. "Well, not bad, right?" Marcus mused, his voice casual, always the one to cut through the tension with effortless charm. Liam's fingers tapped against the balcony railing, his jaw tightening slightly. Emily Thornton was proving to be more than just a temporary solution. She was composed, intelligent, and possessed an uncanny ability to anticipate problems before they arose. But he wasn't naive. He had spent years refining his ability to see through people's facades, and he wasn't about to let his guard down now. "She's young," he murmured, his tone cool. "But I won't be outmaneuvered, not even by her." Marcus chuckled, shaking his head. "Relax, I checked her out. She's clean. But if she's not the right fit, you can cut her loose any time. You're Liam Davenport, after all. You never lose." Liam didn't respond. His gaze had drifted back inside, past the floor-to-ceiling windows, where the soft glow of showroom lights bathed the space in warmth. Emily sat at a long table, sketchpad in hand, lost in the quiet precision of her work. The movement of her pencil across the page was rhythmic, methodical. Then, as if sensing his eyes on her, she looked up. For a brief moment, the world seemed to pause. Her expression didn't waver. There was no challenge in her gaze, no calculation, just a quiet kind of knowing. As if she saw something in him that he himself had never acknowledged. And then, just as quickly, she looked back down, returning to her work. Liam exhaled, turning away. "She's unlike anyone I've met," he admitted to himself. "But that doesn't mean I'll let my guard down." Yet, deep down, he knew one thing for certain. For the first time in 7 years, someone had made him want to look a little longer. San Francisco had long fallen into darkness, but the headquarters of Davenport Atelier remained alive with movement. The rhythmic hum of sewing machines, the rustle of fabric, the low murmurs of designers, each sound layered over the last, creating a symphony of controlled chaos. The air smelled of leather, ink, and a subtle tension that thickened with every passing hour. Liam stood at the head of the conference room, his sharp gaze sweeping over the design team, who were hunched over their workstations, fatigue etched into their faces. The latest holiday collection had been compromised. Faulty stitching in their signature coats, a weakness that couldn't be ignored. To Liam, this was more than just a technical setback. It was a direct threat to everything he had built. A chink in his armor, one that a competitor like Belmont Lux would exploit without hesitation. His voice was a blade cutting through the tension. "Every piece needs to be rechecked within 48 hours. If necessary, bring in extra workers from the factory. Not a single coat leaves this building unless it's flawless." The weight of his words settled over the room. There was no argument, no hesitation. They understood the stakes. Liam had rebuilt Davenport Atelier from nothing, and he expected nothing less than perfection. One hesitant voice finally spoke. "But sir, the deadline." Liam's response was immediate. "Figure it out. That's what I pay you for." Silence fell again. He turned, picking up a sketch that had been abandoned on the table. The design was familiar, an old concept of his, drafted long before he had become CEO, before the weight of responsibility had dulled the pure artistry of creation. He traced the lines with his gaze, remembering what it had felt like to design purely for the love of it. A flicker of something unfamiliar surfaced, but he pushed it down. Now wasn't the time. The launch event was a carefully choreographed affair. The grand ballroom of the Fairmont shimmered under the glow of crystal chandeliers, guests milling about in tailored suits and designer gowns. The scent of expensive cologne and champagne lingered in the air, a reminder of the expectations pressing in from all sides. Liam stood at the center of it all, poised, unreadable. The cameras flashed, the murmurs of the press barely registering in his mind. This was his world, one of control, perfection, and strategy. Then, a whisper at his ear. A PR assistant, pale and nervous. The speech had been printed incorrectly. The final section was missing. A rare misstep. A costly one. Liam clenched his jaw, scanning the crowd, mind already working through a solution. But before he could act, a figure stepped into his line of sight. Emily Thornton. She was calm, composed, holding out a fresh sheet of paper. No hesitation, no explanation, just quiet certainty. Liam took it, scanning the revised text. The words had been sharpened, refined. And the closing line, "Every bag tells a story, and we craft ours with heart." It was a small change, yet it carried weight. It wasn't just polished. It was personal. He looked up, meeting her gaze. She stood out in the sea of opulence, her denim jacket a stark contrast to the glittering gowns around her. Yet she didn't seem out of place. She seemed like she belonged exactly where she was. Something about that unsettled him. Instead of questioning her, he nodded once and stepped onto the stage. The speech left his lips with precision, his delivery effortless. The audience responded in waves, applause rolling through the ballroom, the cameras capturing every moment. The night had been salvaged, and yet, as he stepped down, Emily was gone. And for the first time in a long time, Liam felt something shift, a disturbance in the careful balance he had maintained for years. Liam Davenport never lost control, but tonight, just for a second, he wasn't so sure. The night stretched over San Francisco like an ink-drenched canvas, the city's lights flickering in the distance, pulsing with an energy that never truly faded. From the rooftop balcony of Davenport Atelier, Liam Davenport stood motionless, his gaze lost in the labyrinth of streets below. The world never stopped moving, but in this moment, he felt strangely still. Inside the grand showroom, the echoes of the evening still lingered. The finality of applause, the flashing of cameras, and the distant hum of voices fading into the city's nocturnal symphony. The #, Davenport Power Couple was already surging on social media, an effortless maneuver executed by Emily Thornton long before the event even began. She was calculated, precise. He admired that about her, but he didn't need anyone. At least, that's what he kept telling himself. A few nights later, while the city outside breathed in sleep, Liam remained at the showroom, alone with stacks of sketches and fabric swatches. The golden glow from his desk lamp traced the sharp angles of his face, highlighting the furrow in his brow. The tension locked in his jaw. His penthouse, vast and cold, held nothing for him. The solitude of this place, where design was his only focus, was familiar, predictable. Control, in its purest form. Then the showroom door creaked open. The soft shuffle of footsteps broke the quiet. Emily. She carried a steaming cup of coffee, the scent curling through the air as she placed it in front of him. He didn't acknowledge it at first, just studied her from the corner of his eye. She shouldn't be here. But she was. Her gaze drifted over his latest sketch, a handbag design in progress. Without hesitation, she pointed to a flaw. The clasp, too sharp. Over time, it would cut into the leather. A small detail, but a crucial one. His team had missed it. She had not. His eyes flicked up, catching the quiet confidence in hers. No arrogance, no need for validation, just certainty. She knew design. She pulled out a chair, careful to maintain a respectable distance. He let her stay. As the night deepened, their work intertwined in quiet harmony, pencil strokes blending over shared blueprints, thoughts exchanged in murmured observations, their movements synchronized in the glow of the showroom lights. It was efficient, productive, until his hand brushed against hers. The contact was fleeting but sent an unexpected current through him, a warmth unfamiliar and disarming. He stilled, glancing up. Their eyes met, steady, unchallenging, but undeniably aware. Her touch lingered, though neither of them moved. "You don't sleep?" he asked, voice lower than intended. A soft smile played at the edge of her lips. "I wanted to stay and look at the designs." A simple answer. Yet it settled somewhere deeper inside him than it should have. Hours passed. The sketches refined, the weight of exhaustion creeping in. When Emily finally surrendered to sleep at the table, her head resting against her folded arms, Liam hesitated. He shouldn't care. And yet, he slipped off his suit jacket, carefully draping it over her shoulders. The fabric settled over her with a quiet finality, and for the first time in years, something stirred within him that he could not explain. The next morning, San Francisco greeted them with a soft drizzle. As they stepped onto the drowsy streets, Liam held an umbrella over them both, shielding her from the rain's steady rhythm. Then, suddenly, a misstep, a slip on the slick pavement. Without thinking, his hand shot out, catching her wrist, pulling her in before she could fall. "Careful," he murmured, the depth of his voice laced with something unfamiliar. "I can't afford to lose my best asset." A faint flush colored her cheeks. The moment stretched between them, the rain forming a delicate veil, isolating them from the world outside. Her fingers curled slightly in his grasp, and for the first time, he didn't let go immediately. That evening, back at his desk, his focus was interrupted. A midnight email. Emily's name. The message was brief, direct, a request to a fabric supplier in Portland. Confidential. His fingers tightened around the edge of his desk. Bennett threads, a name, a connection. Unfamiliar. Cassandra's betrayal had begun this way, cloaked in secrecy, disguised as loyalty. Old memories resurfaced, slicing through the quiet understanding that had begun to take shape between him and Emily. Doubt edged in, but so did something else. He flexed his hand, the same one that had held hers in the rain. The warmth still lingered. She's not like Cassandra. The thought was automatic, unshaken, and yet he couldn't dismiss the gnawing uncertainty. Stepping onto the balcony, he let the cool night air wash over him. Below, the city continued in its relentless rhythm, indifferent to the turmoil stirring within him. He thought of Emily, the way she had stayed, the way she had seen what others missed, the way she had accepted his silence without demanding more. He was not used to this feeling, but he liked it. Something was shifting, something he wasn't ready to name. But it was love. San Francisco Fashion Week pulsed with energy. The Moscone Convention Center bathed in golden light, a beacon in the heart of the city. Cameras flashed, the scent of expensive perfume and leather drifted through the air, and whispers of the industry's elite filled the vast hall. Liam Davenport stood center stage, the weight of expectation pressing against him like an invisible force. His posture was immaculate, his suit tailored to perfection, but beneath the composed exterior, his mind was sharp, calculating every possible move. Tonight wasn't just about unveiling Davenport Atelier's latest collection. It was about control, about proving to the world, to his competitors, and to himself that nothing could shake him. The show unfolded flawlessly. Applause followed each design, the fabric moving like poetry down the runway. Then, from the audience, a voice cut through the admiration, sharp as a blade. "Mr. Davenport, rumors suggest you are on the verge of losing control of Davenport Atelier due to a secret shareholder clause. What do you have to say about this?" Silence fell. Liam's expression remained unshaken. He had spent years mastering the art of composure. His response was measured, unwavering. "Rumors exist when people can't compete," he said smoothly, his voice a steady rhythm against the anticipation in the room. "Davenport Atelier is stronger than ever, and I am still at the helm. Let's focus on this collection. That is my answer." Applause erupted, but before he could step down, the click of heels echoed from the side stage. Cassandra Belmont. She emerged like a shadow from the past, a smirk curling at the edges of her painted lips. The very sight of her sent a ripple through the room, the air thick with recognition. "This fake wedding won't save you, Liam," she mused, her voice silk wrapped around steel. "Everyone knows the brand is sinking." Murmurs spread like wildfire. Phones lifted to capture the moment. Liam's jaw tightened, a flicker of fire behind his otherwise unreadable gaze. But before he could move, a hand brushed against his, light, deliberate. Emily. She stepped forward, her presence calm, controlled. She was not rattled, nor was she intimidated. She met Cassandra's gaze head-on, her words steady as she spoke. "Our wedding isn't about saving a brand," she said. "It's about celebrating love through creativity. Liam and I have built something together. We've debated over every detail, every design. Davenport Atelier isn't sinking. It's soaring." The applause that followed was thunderous. Cassandra's expression hardened before she turned sharply, disappearing into the shadows from which she had come. As they stepped off stage, Liam cast a glance at Emily, his voice low. "You're quick, but I could have handled it." She smiled, eyes unwavering. "I know," she said, "but I wanted to stand by you." For a fleeting moment, his guard slipped. A rare smile ghosted across his lips, one that, she was beginning to realize, was just for her. 3 days later, Barcelona unfolded before them, the city basking in the soft golden glow of late afternoon. A crisis had surfaced, one that demanded Liam's immediate attention. A key supplier had pulled out, jeopardizing the winter collection. He didn't hesitate. He never did. With characteristic decisiveness, he booked the flight himself, and he took Emily with him. "You understand design," he had said. "I need your eyes." The meeting at the textile factory was tense, the air thick with negotiation, words measured like pieces on a chessboard. Liam was unyielding, his voice controlled yet firm. "If you refuse to deliver, I'll find another supplier," he said, "and I'll make sure no one in Europe works with you again. But if you meet the deadline, Davenport Atelier will sign a long-term contract. Your choice." It took mere seconds for the supplier to yield. The deal was struck. Emily had watched it all unfold, the quiet admiration in her eyes not lost on him. As they left, the tension gave way to something else. A walk along the Passeig de Gracia. The sun dipped low over the city, casting everything in amber light. The streets glowed, the architecture towering yet delicate. At a small flower stand, Liam plucked a single red rose, tucking it gently into her hair without a word. The simple act sent warmth creeping up her spine. "It suits you," he murmured, his voice quieter than before. She touched the flower, a soft smile breaking across her lips. "You're more romantic than I expected." A light drizzle began to fall, misting the cobblestone streets. He opened an umbrella, drawing her in closer. They walked in silence, the rain mingling with their footsteps, the air thick with something unspoken. The glow of a small cafe invited them inside. The scent of fresh espresso curled in the air, the warmth of the space wrapping around them. They sat, hands cradling steaming cups, their reflections blurred against the window pane streaked with rain. Liam studied her, his gaze unreadable. Then, finally, "When did you first fall in love with fashion?" Emily hesitated, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. Then, her voice softened, lost in memory. "Since I was little," she admitted. "But I had nothing to pursue it with." A pause, a shift in the air. "I grew up with my mother. Homeless, penniless, sleeping on park benches in the freezing rain. She collected trash just to earn a few coins, but one day she collapsed from hunger. I remember the way she held me, whispering, I'm sorry, I can't take care of you? Liam said nothing. He only watched. I was 15. I wanted to quit school to work, but no one would hire me. And then, someone appeared. He saw my mother collapse at a bus stop, called an ambulance, gave her a job. Because of him, my mother could support me through college. That's when I fell in love with fashion. It became my way of giving back. She didn't name the man who had saved her. Liam didn't ask. Instead, after a long silence, his own voice broke through. I once lived for passion, too. She looked at him, waiting. His fingers curled slightly around his cup. Cassandra was everything to me once. I trusted her, let her into my work. She stole from me, sold my designs to a competitor. My father, he couldn't handle the scandal. He had a stroke. He didn't survive. The words sat between them, heavy, unmovable. Emily reached out, fingers grazing the back of his hand, warm, steady. I'm sorry, she whispered, but you're not alone. A quiet promise, a connection neither of them had expected. Back at their hotel, the walls were thin. Liam had been reviewing documents when he heard it. Emily's voice, hushed. Hide the source, she whispered. Don't let him find out. Liam stilled. The words clawed at something buried deep. Betrayal had worn a voice like that before. He had heard it in Cassandra's late-night calls. Doubt curled around his mind like smoke. Then, he remembered. The way Emily had looked at him beneath the Barcelona sky. The way she had smiled when he placed the rose in her hair. The warmth of her fingers against his. She's not like Cassandra. Yet, as he lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, the unease remained. A war between reason and instinct, a feeling he wasn't ready to name. San Francisco lay beneath a dense morning fog, its skyscrapers half swallowed by the silver mist that curled through the city like whispers of forgotten secrets. The streets were still waking, coffee shops flickering to life, the faint hum of distant traffic breaking the hush of dawn. But inside the towering glass fortress of Davenport Atelier, there was no tranquility, no slowness to ease into the day. There was only the cold, sterile glow of a laptop screen, and the man staring at it with unblinking fury. Liam Davenport sat rigid in his leather chair, the blue light casting hard shadows across his sharp features. His fingers curled around the edge of his desk, knuckles white as his eyes moved over the glaring headline. Did Davenport Atelier steal designs? The truth will soon be revealed. Below, the Instagram post from Belmont Luxe displayed a damning side-by-side comparison. A winter coat from Davenport Atelier's latest collection, placed next to an eerily similar piece from Belmont Luxe. The stitching, the silhouette, the details. Identical. The resemblance was too precise to be coincidence. Blood pounded against his temples. This was not just an attack on his reputation. It was a direct, calculated assault on the empire he had rebuilt with his own hands. The emails had already started, shareholders demanding answers, investors threatening to pull back. And he knew exactly who had orchestrated this, Cassandra Belmont. She had humiliated him before, mocked him at Fashion Week. But this was war. A sharp buzz cut through the suffocating silence. His inbox flashed with a new message. The sender's name sent ice through his veins. Cassandra Belmont. The subject line was brief. Ask your fake wife. Liam clicked the email, his breath slowing, his body tensing as the message unfolded before him. Liam, you're a fool to trust her. Emily Thornton isn't who you think she is. Ask her what she's hiding and why she got close to you. Here's the proof. Don't let yourself be deceived again like you were 7 years ago. Attached were 2 images. The first, a grainy photo of Emily at Fashion Week, tucked into a shadowed corner, her phone in hand, her expression unreadable. The second, a screenshot of a conversation supposedly between her and Cassandra herself. The winter collection is ready to be sent over. Don't worry, he doesn't suspect a thing. Liam's pulse pounded against his ribs. A slow, suffocating pressure tightened in his chest, coiling like a vice around his heart. And then the memory surfaced. Barcelona, the hotel room, the whispered phone call, hide the source, don't let him find out. Back then, he had ignored it, brushed aside his doubts because she had leaned against him that night, her body warm in the cool evening air, her eyes so sincere, so unguarded. She had looked at him like he was more than just a CEO, more than just a man shaped by betrayal and loss. But now he could see the cracks. Now, the doubts bled through every memory, turning every touch, every glance, into something poisonous. Emily. A spy. The thought cut deep, deeper than it should have, the late nights spent sketching together, the stolen moments in the rain, the way her laughter had softened the edges of his world. Had any of it been real? A low growl built in his throat. He shoved back his chair with a force that sent it skidding across the floor. Where is she? A startled assistant hesitated in the doorway. Miss Thornton is at the showroom, sir. Liam was already moving. His footsteps echoed through the marble halls, each step fueled by rage, by disbelief, by something darker, something raw and wounded that he refused to name. The air in the showroom was thick, heavy, pressing against him as he shoved open the doors. Emily sat at the design table, sketching, her expression calm, lost in her work. The soft glow of the overhead lights bathed her in gold, turning her into something untouchable, something beautiful. She looked up at the sound of his approach. A small smile touched her lips, like it always did. "You're back early," she said, her voice light. "I was just about to send you this sketch." The impact of his laptop slamming onto the table cut her off. The screen glowed with Cassandra's email, the photos, the messages. Liam didn't speak at first. He just watched her, watched the way her expression shifted, from surprise to confusion to something else, something like fear. "Explain this." His voice was low, controlled, but inside he was anything but. Her gaze flicked to the screen. Her lips parted. "Liam!" His hands curled into fists. "You're Cassandra's spy, aren't you?" The words felt like acid on his tongue. He could barely force them out. Emily paled. Her breath hitched. No, I swear I didn't." His laughter was hollow, bitter. "Not what I think?" He stepped closer, voice dropping lower, sharper. "Do you take me for a fool? You sent her my designs, and in Barcelona, you were on the phone, whispering about hiding something from me. I was him, wasn't I?" She shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. "Liam, please, you have to believe me. I didn't do this." But trust was not something he had left to give. His hand slammed onto the table. A coffee cup crashed to the floor, shattering. "You're worse than she was." Emily flinched. "Liam, listen to me. Enough." His voice cut through the space between them like a blade. "I don't want to hear another word." A breath. A pause. A silence so thick it strangled the air in the room. Then, softer. "Get out." Her shoulders trembled, her hands clenched at her sides. But she didn't argue, didn't fight. She just nodded. And then she turned. Her footsteps were hollow. The door clicked shut behind her. And Liam stood alone in the silence she left behind, drowning in it. He had loved her. And he had destroyed her. San Francisco was wrapped in a thick gray afternoon, the city's towering buildings lost in the weight of rolling fog. But inside the virtual boardroom of Davenport Atelier, the atmosphere crackled with tension. The air was heavy, charged with anticipation, and the unspoken panic of shareholders who had just weathered the storm of Cassandra Belmont's rumors. Liam Davenport sat motionless before the massive screen, his sharp eyes scanning the dozens of faces on the Zoom call. He wore a black suit, every inch exuding cold authority, but inside him was a storm. Rage, regret, and a love so overwhelming that denying it was no longer an option. That morning, after throwing Emily out with words like knives, Marcus had uncovered part of the truth. She wasn't a spy. She was the hidden heir of Charles Langston, a man who had once shaped the fashion world, and she had been silently protecting him all along. But now, Liam knew that to save his company and to win Emily back, he had to act. Not rely on others. Not let his pain dictate his choices. He had to fight. Taking a slow breath, he straightened in his seat. "Thank you all for joining this emergency meeting." His voice was steady, razor sharp. "Rumors have caused panic, but today, I will set the record straight." A flick of his fingers. The screen changed. Internal emails from Belmont Lux appeared, documents he had retrieved himself that morning with the help of his IT team and the very skills he had sharpened while clawing his company back from ruin. Cassandra Belmont accused Davenport Atelier of copying her designs, Liam continued coolly. "But I have proof she orchestrated this attack." Another click. A file expanded. The email Cassandra had sent her PR team appeared in bold black text. "Spread the rumors on Instagram. Make sure the shareholders panic." The Zoom call buzzed with murmurs. Click. Another file. A transaction history. A freelance designer paid to replicate the collection before its release. A deliberate sabotage. The screen split. On one side, Liam, on the other, Cassandra. Her smug smile faltered. "Liam," she purred, though a tremor betrayed her confidence. "You think your little stunt will work? The shareholders aren't fools. Emily Thornton was your spy. She gave me the designs." Liam clenched his fists under the table. The accusation felt like acid against his skin. But before he could answer, a new window popped up. Emily had joined the call. Her face filled the screen, her eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion, yet burning with determination. Liam's breath caught in his throat. She came back, after everything he said? But Emily wasn't looking at him. Her gaze was locked on Cassandra. "You called me a spy?" Emily's voice was quiet, but each syllable carried a razor's edge. Another click, and more evidence flooded the screen. "These," she said, "are the messages you sent to a hacker, fabricating the texts between us." Click. An invoice from Cassandra's account. Click. A voice recording. Cassandra's voice, instructing someone to spread the lie. Gasps erupted from the board members. Voices whispered in frantic conversation. Cassandra's face drained of color. You're lying!" she screeched. "No one will believe this." "I do." Liam's voice cut through the call, low, controlled, ice cold. "And I verified it myself." His eyes locked onto Cassandra's, dark and unyielding. "You played your last game, Cassandra, but you won't win this time." A senior shareholder cleared his throat. "If this evidence is real, I move to remove Cassandra Belmont from the board." Nods of agreement. A wave of disapproval crashing over Cassandra like a flood. A final decision. Cassandra was forced to relinquish her shares. A lawsuit for corporate fraud awaited her. The screen faded. The war was over, but Liam had another battle to fight. Golden Gate Park was bathed in golden light filtering through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the cobbled paths. But the sky had begun to darken, heavy with the promise of rain. Liam walked briskly, his heart pounding. He had fought it, denied it. But today, after nearly losing Emily to his own blind distrust, he knew the truth. His heart couldn't bear to let her go. He found her sitting on a bench, cradling a now cold cup of coffee. her gaze lost in the rippling lake. She looked smaller than ever in her worn denim jacket, fragile after everything that had unraveled that morning. Liam stepped closer. "Emily." She looked up, surprise flickering in her eyes before she quickly lowered them. I didn't think you would come." He didn't sit. Instead, he dropped to one knee before her, taking her hands in his grip firm, desperate, his voice raw. "I love you." Emily's breath caught. Tears welled in her eyes. Liam's voice shook with emotion. "I don't know when it started. Maybe that night at the showroom when you brought me coffee. Maybe when you laughed in the rain with me. Maybe in Barcelona, when you rested your head against my shoulder." He swallowed hard. "For so long, I locked myself away. Built walls. I told myself I would never open my heart again." His fingers tightened around hers. "I was wrong. I was so wrong to doubt you, to hurt you." A shaky breath. "Forgive me, Emily. Stay with me. Not because of the contract, but because I need you." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Liam," she whispered, voice breaking. "I never wanted to leave." Then she fell into his arms, sobbing into his shoulder, and the first drops of rain began to fall. Liam pulled her up, held her closer, and kissed her. A kiss that was desperate, fiery, and deep, as if he could erase all the pain, all the distance, all the mistakes that had kept them apart. The rain grew heavier, soaking them both. But they didn't move. Didn't let go. Because in this moment, the world had disappeared, leaving only them. A gentle spring afternoon settled over San Francisco. Golden sunlight filtering through the leaves outside the flagship showroom of Davenport Atelier. The city pulsed beyond its glass windows, but inside, time seemed to slow. Sunlight streamed in through the high-arched windows, casting warm golden hues across the polished marble floors, illuminating the elegant displays of meticulously crafted designs. The usual buzz of employees, designers, and executives was replaced by an air of quiet expectancy. At the heart of it all stood Liam Davenport. Today, he wasn't clad in his usual sharp black suit, the emblem of his control and precision. Instead, his sleeves were rolled up, his expression unreadable, yet softened by something rare. Something real. Across from him stood Emily Thornton, unaware of what was about to unfold. In her hands, she held a thick stack of sketches for the upcoming collection, her fingers grazing the paper with an absent-minded touch. She glanced up, catching his gaze. Then Liam took a step forward, and to the collective shock of everyone in the showroom, he dropped to one knee. A hush fell over the room. The moment stretched, delicate yet weighted with significance. From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box and flipped it open. The sapphire ring inside shimmered, mirroring the brilliance in Emily's wide eyes. "Emily," his voice, always deep and commanding, carried a warmth that had long been absent. "You are the one I want to walk through life with. From the night you brought me coffee to the way your hands fit in mine under the San Francisco rain, from the moment you leaned on my shoulder in Barcelona. You changed me. You brought me back to life after years of shutting my heart away." He exhaled, his fingers tightening around hers. "I won't promise you the world, but I will promise you my world. To love you. To protect you. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Emily's eyes, her breath hitching as emotion overwhelmed her. Her hands trembled, pressing against her lips, as if trying to hold back the rush of feelings. And then, she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, voice breaking but smile radiant. "Yes, Liam. I will." The room erupted into applause. Some whistled, others wiped away tears. Liam stood, sliding the ring onto her finger before pulling her into his arms. He kissed her, deep and unhurried, before whispering against her ear, "I've waited too long to say this." The wedding came the very next week, not extravagant or ostentatious, but intimate, just them, their closest friends, and a love that had survived every storm. Golden Gate Park, drenched in the morning light, stood as a silent witness to their vows. The crisp air carried the scent of blooming flowers, the soft rustle of leaves forming a quiet melody. Emily walked toward Liam, her simple white dress swaying with every graceful step. Her brown hair cascaded in soft waves, and behind her ear was a single red rose, just like the night in Barcelona when she had unknowingly begun to unlock his heart. Liam stood at the altar, his gaze never leaving her, as if she was the only thing that existed. A small circle of friends and employees from Davenport Atelier surrounded them, bearing witness to the moment that would change their lives forever. Marcus Bennett officiated, his usual teasing replaced with solemn reverence. "Liam, do you promise to love and protect Emily forever?" Marcus's voice carried over the hushed crowd. Liam's hands enclosed hers. His voice was steady, unwavering. "I do, with all my heart." Marcus turned to Emily. "And you, Emily?" She smiled, her eyes shining. "I do, with all my life." They exchanged rings, and as Marcus declared, "You may now kiss the bride." Liam didn't hesitate. He pulled her close, capturing her lips in a kiss filled with every unspoken promise, every moment that had led them here. Applause erupted. Cheers rang through the park. And then, the first drops of rain began to fall. A drizzle, then heavier, as if the sky itself was offering its blessing. But neither of them moved. Neither of them let go. They stood in the rain, just as they had that night when they had found each other again. They didn't just begin their lives as husband and wife. Together, they built an empire. Davenport Atelier merged with Bennett Threads, Emily's own brand, creating a powerhouse that redefined the world of fashion, one that merged Liam's luxury craftsmanship with Emily's sustainable creativity. Liam, with his sharp leadership, pushed their expansion. Emily, with her vision, opened new markets, reshaping their future. Late nights were spent at the showroom, some filled with heated debates, others with quiet laughter. But every night ended the same. A hand held tight, a kiss shared under the soft glow of desk lamps. 1 year later, on a crisp autumn evening, their newly rebranded fashion house, Davenport Bennett, celebrated its first anniversary. The showroom glowed under the golden light, customers lining up outside, eager to be part of the legacy they had built together. Liam stood at the heart of it all, his gaze sweeping over the showroom until it landed on her. Emily stood beside a mannequin, adjusting the drape of a dress, her expression carrying the same passion she had the day they first met. He walked up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and whispered against her ear, "From doubt, you gave me forever." Emily turned, her smile soft, pressing her hand against his chest. "And from fear, you gave me a home." They stood there, eyes locked, their journey flashing before them. The nights of uncertainty, the rain, the stolen kisses. Barcelona. Golden Gate Park. The moment he had knelt before her, offering his heart in the only way he knew how. Liam tilted her chin up and kissed her, slow and deep, under the glow of the showroom lights. Applause broke out from employees and customers alike, but they didn't care. In that moment, there was only them. As the kiss ended, Liam laced his fingers through hers and led her onto the showroom's balcony. San Francisco stretched before them, glowing under a million city lights, a silent witness to their journey, from doubt to love to forever. He held her close, whispering, "I won't promise you the world, Emily, but I promise you my world." She rested her head against his chest, her voice soft but unwavering. and I promise to stay in it forever." They stood there, hands entwined, hearts steady, as the city pulsed below, a quiet reminder of how far they had come, of how love, against all odds, had become the most beautiful thing they had ever created.